We spent the last 2 weeks building a foundation. We started with clarity, getting a handle on where your money is actually going. Then we talked about vision, aligning your spending with your values so you're building a life that you actually want. Those are the first steps. But now we have to talk about the practical reality of how you get there. To reach financial freedom, to reach that work optional stage well before traditional retirement age, you need more than just a budget, you need a surplus. So today we're going to talk about cash flow, specifically how to create a positive cash flow that allows you to stop trading time for money and start making your money work for you. Here's a simple and elegant equation that's at the core of every personal and business financial reality. Income minus expenses equals cash flow. The bigger you can make that delta, the difference between what comes in and what goes out, the faster you'll reach financial freedom, the faster you get to a work optional point in life, because that surplus is what you invest. And when you have a healthy surplus every month, you can take that money, invest it, and let compound interest take over. And that's when the magic happens. That's when your money starts generating its own income, eventually replacing the need for you to work for a paycheck. No more trading your time for money. Huzzah! But you can't get there if that gap is small or non-existent. And that's why establishing the habit of tracking your money was our first habit. You have to know where you are all along the journey. You don't want to get lost on the way, and you want to teach your kids early on how to navigate their path. So now we need to add the income piece so that we can make the most of the full equation. But you can't do any of that if you don't track income and expenses, which, as we've already discussed, doesn't take hours and hours and fancy spreadsheets. You just have to be consistent, and you can do that in 15 minutes a week. Consistency in action. There it is again. Hello, old friend. So, how to widen that gap between income and expenses? How do we increase the surplus and cash flow each month? Ultimately, there are only two levers you can pull. You can decrease or control your expenses or increase your income. We talked last week about tracking your expenses, getting clarity, and then spending in line with your values, spending on things that matter to you and cutting back on things that don't really bring you much value. That's how you take care of your present self as well as your future self. So it's very similar with income. If your income is set, and if you're salaried, for example, and it's more than enough, then it's easy to just focus on the spending part of the equation. But if your income varies, then you need to track it so that you know you're staying in line with your overall surplus plan. Or if you've worked out a plan for your spending and you still want your cash flow amount to be more each month so that you have more to invest and put to work for you so you can get to financial freedom sooner, then you have to start looking at ways to increase the income side of your equation. That could mean a variety of things. You could make a plan to earn more money in your current career, whether that's justifying a larger raise, looking around for a job at a different company, seeking a promotion, those kind of things. If you get paid hourly, it could be as simple as picking up extra shifts. Or it could be starting some sort of side hustle to bring in extra cash, and that applies whether you're hourly or not. And that doesn't have to be a lot necessarily, because any income that you're adding, 100% of that should be going to your investments. You keep your spending where you've already determined it should be, and then any extra income always goes straight to investments and gets put to work making you more money. And that's true whether that's a raise or a promotion, or you get a different job and you're making more money, or you're just adding a side hustle or picking up more shifts and earning that overtime. Don't change your spending just because you're bringing in more. You want that more money to go all into your investments so you can get to that work optional financial freedom point in life sooner. If you've adjusted your spending correctly, you should be enjoying your life now and expediting your path to FI at the same time. And it might sound like a lot, but once you start to get things dialed in, it's infectious and exciting because you start to feel a whole lot different about your security and your options going forward. I mean, it's a thrill. And you want to both model and teach these habits to your kids. The earlier they start to learn this stuff, and to the extent that it becomes part of their normal family life, you're giving them an incredible gift of not only basic financial literacy, but you're setting habits, even if they stray from them at different points in their life. You're setting habits that they're going to have muscle memory for, so to speak, and they'll be able to go back to those healthy financial habits much more easily than their peers who never learned any of this stuff. Okay, one last thing before we wrap up and do a brief preview for next week. There's a very important point to make about the income minus expenses equals cash flow equation. It is possible to have a negative result, and that is bad, very bad. That's how you get into things like credit card debt. And then instead of your money working for you, suddenly it's dragging you down like quicksand, and you're having to work extra and or cut your spending more than you'd like just in order to pay those high interest rates, which can be 25% or more. It's a very challenging hole to get out of. You want your kids to avoid that mistake. You want them to avoid that suffering. And so teaching them the habit of tracking their income and spending and always knowing the difference, making sure they always have a positive cash flow, is one of the best life habits you can ever teach them. Okay, so next week we're going to zoom in on the income side of things. Since our kids don't know what their future careers will be yet, it's a great time to start teaching them about different sources of income and how to think about earning money. This aligns not only with values like we've discussed with spending, it also ties into exploring your passions. And that's a fun place to explore with your kids. And it's important because think about the potential for their future happiness if they can find ways to make money by doing something they love. I mean, they might still be working, but it's a vastly different way of going through life because it's no longer about strictly trading your time for money. If you can make money doing something you love, the time factor has a tendency to just slip away. More about that next week. Please like, subscribe, and share with other parents that want to raise money smart kids. Thanks for watching. See you next week.